Rowan Pierce straightened his tie as he approached the gleaming entrance of Holt and Barkley LLP. After 20 years supporting Sabrina's career, he took pride in these moments, watching his wife shine among the legal elite. "Name, sir?" The receptionist's manicured finger traced down her tablet. "Rowan Pierce, husband of Sabrina Pierce, named partner." Her polite smile faltered. "I'm sorry, sir. You're not on the list." "There must be some mistake." Sabrina appeared at the doorway, elegant in midnight blue. Relief washed over him until he caught her expression. Cool, professional, distant. "Sabrina, they can't find my name." "Because it isn't there." Her voice dropped. "You don't fit the firm's image tonight, Rowan." The watching eyes of arriving guests burned into his back as he stood frozen at the threshold of his wife's world. The Holt and Barkley LLP annual gala was the legal event of the season in the city. The towering glass facade of the Metropolitan Club glowed against the evening sky, a beacon of success that Rowan Pierce had come to associate with his wife's rising star. He adjusted his bow tie as he stepped from the cab, nodding at the doorman who held the heavy brass door with white-gloved hands. Rowan had attended these events for years, not that he particularly enjoyed the stiff conversation or political maneuvering, but Sabrina had worked too damn hard not to have someone in her corner celebrating her accomplishments. 23 years of marriage had taught him the value of showing up. "Evening," he said, approaching the reception table with practiced ease. Two young women in black dresses managed the guest list on sleek tablets. "Good evening, sir." The blonde receptionist smiled professionally. "Name, please." "Rowan Pierce, husband of Sabrina Pierce, named partner." He couldn't help the small swell of pride. After all the late nights, the sacrifices, the clients he'd personally steered her way from his own business connections, she'd made it. The receptionist's fingers tapped across the screen, her brow furrowing slightly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce. I don't see your name on our list." Rowan leaned forward, speaking quieter. "There must be some mistake. I'm Sabrina Pierce's husband." "Let me check again." More tapping, a glance at her colleague. "I'm afraid you're not listed, sir." Around him, other couples breezed through the entrance, the men in tuxedos, the women in evening gowns, all with the easy confidence of belonging. Rowan felt the first flicker of unease as the receptionist picked up her phone. "Perhaps we could contact Miss Pierce directly," the receptionist offered, her professional smile never wavering. Before she could make the call, Sabrina appeared in the archway leading to the main ballroom. She looked stunning in a midnight blue gown that complemented her silver-streaked dark hair. For a moment, Rowan felt relief wash over him. "Sabrina," he called, gesturing to the receptionist. "There seems to be some mix-up with the guest list." Sabrina glided toward them, her expression shifting from polite curiosity to thinly veiled annoyance as she realized the situation. Several colleagues hovered just behind her, their attention caught by the interruption. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked, her voice carrying the crisp authority that had won her countless courtroom victories. "Your husband isn't on our guest list, Miss Pierce," the receptionist explained. Sabrina's eyes met Rowan's, but where he expected to find confusion or concern, he saw only cool calculation. "There's no mistake," she said flatly. "I don't understand," Rowan said, keeping his voice low despite the heat rising in his chest. "We discussed this last week. I even had my tux pressed. The firm decided to keep the guest list more selective this year." Sabrina glanced back at her watching colleagues. Board members, key clients, potential investors. And spouses, Rowan noted, gesturing to the couples flowing past them. Some spouses, Sabrina corrected, her voice dropping to ensure only he could hear. Frankly, Rowan, you don't fit the firm's image tonight. The words landed like a physical blow. 23 years, and she was cutting him out like an inconvenient paragraph in a legal brief. I see. He managed to keep his voice steady despite the eyes watching from all directions. Don't make a scene, she murmured. It's just one evening. One evening where you're ashamed to have your husband at your side. Sabrina's expression hardened. I have guests waiting. We'll discuss this at home. Without another word, she turned and walked back through the archway, never once looking back to see him standing there, erased from the list as easily as if he'd never existed in her life at all. Rowan stood motionless for several heartbeats, acutely aware of the curious glances from arriving guests. The receptionist busied herself with her tablet, offering him the mercy of pretending not to notice his humiliation. Thank you for your help, he said to her, his voice surprisingly steady. He nodded once, turned on his heel, and walked toward the exit with measured steps. The cool evening air hit his face as he emerged onto the sidewalk. He inhaled deeply, filling his lungs as if testing whether they still worked. They did. Everything still worked, despite the hollow feeling spreading through his chest. Bringing the car around, sir? The valet asked. No, thank you. Rowan handed him a 20. I believe I'll walk a bit. He moved down the block, away from the golden light spilling from the Metropolitan Club. Only when he was certain he was out of sight did he loosen his bow tie and unbutton his collar. The night air felt good against his throat. Rowan Pierce was not a man given to public displays of emotion. Growing up on his grandfather's farm in Ohio had taught him that a man controls what he can and accepts what he can't. Right now, he couldn't control his wife's decision to erase him from her professional life, but he damn sure could control his response to it. He reached the parking garage where he'd left his car earlier. The attendant barely glanced up from his magazine as Rowan took his ticket and headed for level 3. Inside his Audi, he sat motionless for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. Well, that settles that, he said to the empty car. As he drove out of the garage, the Metropolitan Club's illuminated facade appeared in his rearview mirror. Funny thing about rear views, they showed you where you'd been, not where you were going. And Rowan suddenly had the distinct feeling that after 23 years, he and Sabrina were headed in very different directions. His mind, always more strategic than emotional, began turning over certain facts. The Kestrel freight account that he'd brought to the firm through his old college roommate. The document management system he'd helped implement when the firm was still struggling. The lease on their event space that was technically under his real estate holding company. Interesting facts. Useful facts. Facts that a man might consider when deciding how to proceed after being told he didn't fit the image. The city lights blurred past as Rowan drove, his hand steady on the wheel despite the storm brewing inside him. Traffic had thinned at this hour, leaving him alone with his thoughts on the quiet stretch of road leading to their suburban home. His briefcase sat on the passenger seat where Sabrina should have been. He glanced at it, remembering the day he'd gifted her a matching one when she made junior partner 8 years ago. Italian leather, her initials embossed in gold. For the big cases, he'd told her. The memory triggered others, cascading through his mind like dominoes. The Westfield merger 4 years back. How many late-night strategy sessions had he hosted at their home? He'd connected Sabrina with his old Harvard classmate Richard Westfield, vouched for her capabilities when the old man had hesitated to entrust a female attorney with his family's century-old business. That case alone had accelerated her path to named partner by at least 2 years. Rowan signaled for the exit, his thoughts drifting to the document management system he'd implemented for the firm when they were still struggling with digital transition. He'd called in favors from his tech industry contacts, negotiated pricing that saved the firm hundreds of thousands, spent weekends personally training their staff, all while refusing compensation. "Just helping my wife's firm," he'd insisted. The Metropolitan Club's event space itself was secured through his real estate connections. The 5-year lease at below-market rates had been a wedding anniversary gift to Sabrina. "You deserve a proper venue to showcase the firm," he'd told her. She'd been delighted then. His headlights caught the reflective street sign for their neighborhood. The elegant homes sat dark and quiet, residents either asleep or, like Sabrina, still out enjoying their evening plans. 23 years together. How many of his business contacts had become her clients? How many of his connections had opened doors for her? Not that he'd ever kept score. That wasn't what marriage meant to him. But tonight, for the first time, Rowan found himself mentally tallying the invisible foundation he'd built beneath his wife's success. "You don't fit the firm's image," she'd said, as if he were some embarrassing accessory rather than the cornerstone he'd actually been. He turned into their driveway, the sensor lights illuminating the path to a home that suddenly felt less like his own. Rowan hung his tuxedo jacket in the closet, methodically removing his cufflinks and placing them in their case. The house echoed with emptiness. He checked his watch, 10:30 p.m. The gala would be in full swing now, champagne flowing, connections being made, deals taking shape over canapes, and practiced smiles. He picked up his phone, hesitated, then dialed Sabrina's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Sabrina, it's me. I made it home. I think we need to talk about what happened tonight. Call me when you get this." He ended the call and loosened his bow tie, dropping it on the dresser. 20 minutes later, he tried again. "It's me again. I'm not angry, just confused. I thought we were partners in this. Please call." Rowan poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and carried it to his home office. The room had always been his sanctuary, leather-bound books lining custom shelves, his grandfather's antique desk positioned to catch the morning light. He sat down, unlocked his computer, and pulled up his email. Another call at 11:15, straight to voicemail this time. "Sabrina, I see you've turned your phone off. We've been married 23 years. I think I deserve more than being dismissed at the door like some gatecrasher." He opened his calendar, scrolling through upcoming commitments. Tomorrow morning, breakfast with Gerald Kestrel of Kestrel Freight, one of the firm's biggest clients, though Sabrina probably didn't remember it was Rowan who'd introduced them at a charity golf tournament 5 years ago. Final call, 11:45. "I'll be sleeping in the guest room tonight. We need to talk tomorrow. This isn't about one party, and I think you know that." Rowan set his phone down, the screen dark with Sabrina's continued silence. The message was clear. Tonight's firm celebration took precedence over his feelings, over their marriage, over 2 decades of partnership. He finished his bourbon, feeling a calm clarity replace the initial hurt. Some things couldn't be unsaid, some doors couldn't be unopened. Maybe it was time to reckon with the facts. Past midnight, Rowan sat surrounded by open files and scattered documents. His laptop displayed spreadsheets and contracts, while his tablet showed the firm's client roster. On the desk before him lay the lease agreement for the Metropolitan Club, his signature bold at the bottom where he'd signed as managing director of his real estate holding company, RPL Holdings. He methodically went through each document, making notes on a legal pad. The Kestrel freight account. Their transportation agreement with the firm included a personal service clause specifying Rowan as the primary contact. The document management system. The license was registered under his name, with permission for the firm's use at the discretion of the license holder. 3 hours in, he had compiled a comprehensive list of leverage points, places where his invisible support of Sabrina's firm could be quietly withdrawn without malice or drama. Not revenge, he told himself. Just a necessary recalibration of boundaries. Rowan pulled out the firm's event contract with the Metropolitan Club. As the property's leasing agent, he had included a standard clause allowing 30-day termination by either party. He'd never imagined he'd be the one to invoke it. He drafted an email to his attorney detailing the steps he wanted taken. Nothing vindictive, nothing that would cause unnecessary harm, just a clean separation of his business interests from Sabrina's firm. Professional and dignified, like pulling out a foundation stone by stone rather than dynamiting the whole structure. A separate email went to Gerald Kestrel, requesting their scheduled breakfast be moved up by an hour. "Some urgent business matters to discuss," he wrote, keeping the tone conversational. Rowan reviewed his notes one final time, then gathered the documents into a neat pile. The bourbon had long since worn off, leaving him clear-headed and resolute. He would not be erased so easily. He picked up his phone and sent a brief text message to his attorney, Andrew Chambers. "Need to meet first thing tomorrow. Activating contingency clauses on several agreements. Will explain in person." The reply came almost immediately, despite the late hour. "Confirmed. 7:30 a.m. at my office." Rowan powered down his computer and straightened his desk. He wasn't acting out of anger or hurt pride, though both emotions had flared earlier in the evening. This was about self-respect, about standing firm when someone tried to render you invisible. "Time to set things straight," he murmured to the empty room as he pressed send on the meeting confirmation. The first stone was about to be removed from the foundation. The Meridian Hotel's restaurant hummed with early morning business activity. Rowan arrived 15 minutes before his scheduled breakfast with Gerald Kestrel, selecting a corner table that offered both privacy and a view of the downtown skyline. He ordered coffee and reviewed his notes one final time. Gerald arrived precisely at 7:00 a.m., his imposing 6'4" frame moving with the purposeful stride that had earned him the nickname the Freight Train in business circles. He spotted Rowan and broke into a genuine smile. Rowan Pierce, as punctual as ever. Gerald's handshake was firm. "When you asked to move our breakfast up, I figured something interesting was brewing." "Always good to see you, Gerald. Thanks for accommodating the schedule change." The server appeared, took their orders, and disappeared with practiced efficiency. "How'd the gala go last night?" Gerald asked, stirring cream into his coffee. "Sorry I couldn't make it. Got stuck in Phoenix with a logistics snafu." Rowan maintained his neutral expression. "Actually, that's partly what I wanted to discuss with you." He removed a folder from his briefcase and placed it on the table. "I've been reviewing our various business arrangements, and I think it's time for some restructuring." Gerald's eyebrows rose slightly. "Something happened with the firm?" "Let's just say I'm recalibrating my involvement with Holt and Barkley. As you know, our transportation agreement includes a personal service clause with me as your primary contact." Gerald nodded slowly, studying Rowan's face. "You've been my point man for 5 years. Sabrina's firm handles the legal work, but you're the one who's kept things running smooth as silk." "I appreciate that, Gerald. I'm establishing a new arrangement with Moreno and Shaw that I believe would better serve Kestrel Freight's interests going forward." Gerald leaned back, a knowing look crossing his weathered face. "I always wondered if Sabrina realized how many of the firm's clients were there because of you." Their breakfast arrived, and they paused while the server arranged their plates. "The way I see it," Gerald continued once they were alone, "my company's relationship has always been with you first, the firm second. Wherever you go, our business follows. That's just how it works with old-school operators like us." Rowan felt a quiet satisfaction at the validation. "I've drafted a transition proposal. Clean, professional, no disruption to your operations." Gerald picked up his fork, but set it down again without taking a bite. "Rowan, we've known each other 20 years. Something happened. You don't have to tell me what, but I want you to know I trust your judgment." "I appreciate that, Gerald. Just tell me one thing. This move makes business sense for Kestrel, right? Not just personal?" "Absolutely." Rowan met his gaze directly. "I wouldn't jeopardize your interests, even if my own circumstances are changing." Gerald nodded, satisfied. "Then consider it done. Send over the paperwork this afternoon." They turned to their breakfast, the conversation shifting to industry news and Gerald's new distribution center. By the time they shook hands at the conclusion of their meal, Kestrel Freight, the firm's second-largest client, had effectively been redirected. As Gerald left, he paused. Whatever happened, their loss is someone else's gain. That's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. At 10:30 a.m., Rowan entered the glass-fronted offices of TechVault Solutions, the IT management company he'd personally selected 3 years ago to maintain the document management system he'd implemented for Sabrina's firm. Marcus Chen, TechVault's head of client services, met him in the reception area. "Rowan, didn't expect to see you today. Everything okay with the DMS?" "That's what I came to discuss." Rowan followed Marcus to his office, a space dominated by multiple monitors and the organized chaos typical of tech professionals. "I need to make some administrative changes to the system." Marcus gestured for Rowan to take a seat. "What kind of changes are we talking about?" "I need to revoke the firm's master access privileges and reset the permission structure." Rowan's tone remained matter-of-fact. "As the license holder, I'm exercising my right to modify authorized users." Marcus's fingers paused above his keyboard. "That's significant. The firm uses that system for practically everything: case files, client communications, billing. I'm aware. I designed the implementation." Rowan handed Marcus a USB drive. "This contains a transition protocol. The firm will maintain limited access to their existing files for 30 days while they migrate to another solution." Marcus plugged in the drive, scanning the contents with a professional eye. "This is comprehensive. Very clean approach." He glanced up at Rowan. "But it will cause disruption." "There's no way around that." "I understand." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "The license is definitely in your name, not the firm's. That was unusual, but I remember you were adamant about it during setup. A precaution that proved prudent." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll need your authorization credentials and a formal written request." Rowan removed an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Already prepared." As Marcus began implementing the changes, Rowan watched the code scrolling across the screen. He'd invested countless weekends learning this system, teaching the firm's staff, troubleshooting their problems, all without compensation or recognition. "This will take effect immediately," Marcus said, completing the final keystrokes. "Their system will prompt for new credentials that no one has. They'll be locked out of advanced functions until they establish a new license agreement." "Thank you, Marcus. Your discretion is appreciated." "Of course." Marcus hesitated. "For what it's worth, I always thought it was strange that you weren't formally acknowledged as the architect of their system. In my experience, firms usually make a big deal about technology partnerships." Rowan stood to leave. Sometimes the most essential structures remain invisible until they're gone. Marcus walked him to the door. They'll feel this by end of business today. Anyone I should contact when they call in a panic? They have my number, Rowan replied. Whether they choose to use it is up to them. The Madison Street Cafe offered the perfect blend of quality and privacy for business conversations. Rowan arrived at 1:15 p.m. to meet James Whitmore, the property manager for the Metropolitan Club. After speaking with his attorney and executing the necessary paperwork that morning, this was his final task of the day, formally notifying the club of his intent to terminate the firm's event space lease. James was already seated in a corner booth, a manila folder beside his untouched water glass. They exchanged pleasantries as Rowan settled across from him. "I was surprised to get your call," James said after they'd ordered. "The lease has been one of our most stable arrangements." "Circumstances change." Rowan kept his tone neutral. "I've brought the termination notice, 30 days as specified in the agreement." James accepted the document, glancing over it. "This will disappoint the events team. Your wife's firm has been a model tenant." The decision wasn't made lightly. Their food arrived, and James tucked the notice into his folder. "Not my business to pry, but this is rather sudden. The holiday party season is approaching, and they've already reserved 3 dates. The terms allow for termination with proper notice. I'm providing that notice." James studied him for a moment. "Of course, it's just unexpected after Miss Pierce's comments at the board meeting last month." Rowan paused mid-bite. "Board meeting?" "The club's quarterly review with major tenants. She mentioned expanding their usage next year, said they wouldn't need to involve you in future arrangements." Something cold settled in Rowan's stomach. "Did she elaborate on that?" James shifted uncomfortably. "She indicated that while you had initially facilitated the relationship, the firm would be handling all venue matters directly going forward. Honestly, she made it sound like your involvement had been—" he searched for the word. "Peripheral." Rowan set down his fork with deliberate care. "Interesting, considering I'm the signatory on the lease and the one who negotiated the below-market rate. That's why her comment struck me as odd. You've been our primary contact since day one." James hesitated. "She also introduced someone as their new facilities manager, a young man named Craig Devlin. Said he'd be the point person for all venue matters." The pieces clicked into place with disturbing clarity. This wasn't a sudden decision made at last night's gala. Sabrina had been systematically minimizing his role for months, preparing to cut him out entirely. "I see." Rowan maintained his composed exterior despite the revelation. "That certainly clarifies things." Their lunch continued with safer topics, but Rowan's mind was cataloging this new information. By the time they shook hands in parting, his resolve had only strengthened. Back in his car, Rowan checked his phone for the first time in hours. 3 missed calls from Sabrina's office, and a text message that simply read, "Issues with the document system. Call ASAP." No mention of last night. No acknowledgement of what had happened at the gala. Just a demand for technical support when his utility became apparent. His phone chimed with an incoming email. Sabrina again. "Rowan, the document system is completely locked down, and Marcus says you're the only one who can fix it. Whatever point you're trying to make, this is affecting client work. Call me when you get this. S." Not even a question about why he might have done it. No recognition of the connection between her behavior last night and his actions today. Just the expectation that he would drop everything to solve her problem. Rowan started his car, a grim smile touching his lips. The foundation stones were being removed one by one, and now the structure was beginning to tremble. Rowan sat in his temporary office at his attorney's firm, reviewing the morning reports coming in from various sources. Andrew Chambers had generously offered him the use of a spare conference room while they managed the legal aspects of his business separations. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from Teresa Galloway, the IT director at Tech Vault, who worked alongside Marcus Chen's. He'd known Teresa for years through various industry functions. "Rowan, I hope I'm not interrupting." Her voice carried the clipped efficiency of someone managing a crisis. "Not at all, Teresa. I've been expecting your call." "Well, it's happening faster than even Marcus predicted. The firm's document system is essentially paralyzed. They can access existing files in read-only mode, but can't create or modify documents, email integration is down, and their billing system can't process hours." Rowan made a note on his legal pad. "All expected outcomes of the permission changes. They've called 6 times this morning. I've explained the situation, but they're not taking it well." She paused. "Sabrina personally called Marcus and demanded immediate restoration." "I assume he explained the licensing situation?" "In detail. She then threatened legal action against Tech Vault." Rowan couldn't help but smile slightly. "Which would be unsuccessful given the clear documentation that I am the license holder, not the firm." "Exactly what our legal team told her." Teresa's voice lowered. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but she then tried to convince Marcus that this was all a misunderstanding, that you were just playing games because of a silly argument." Interesting characterization. "There's more. Gerald Kestrel's office called the firm this morning about transferring their legal files. Apparently, that created quite a stir. The managing partners had an emergency meeting." Rowan leaned back in his chair. "And the Metropolitan Club?" "That I don't know specifically, but word travels fast in business circles. I heard from a mutual connection that there's significant concern about losing the venue for their holiday events." Teresa hesitated. "Rowan, whatever happened between you two, the consequences are hitting hard and fast." The word meltdown was used. "I appreciate the information, Teresa. One more thing. Sabrina is apparently on her way to see you. Her assistant called here looking for you about 20 minutes ago." Rowan checked his watch. "Thank you for the heads up." After ending the call, he straightened the papers on the conference table. His actions had been measured and proportionate, removing support he had provided rather than actively causing harm. He had simply reclaimed what was rightfully his, yet the firm was facing operational chaos within 24 hours. His phone buzzed with a text from the reception desk. "Sabrina Pierce here to see you. Says it's urgent." Rowan took a deep breath. The confrontation he'd been expecting was about to begin. The conference room door swung open with force. Sabrina strode in, immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit, her professional armor fully deployed. Her face was a carefully controlled mask of fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" She closed the door behind her, but not before Rowan noticed curious glances from staff in the hallway. "Hello, Sabrina." He remained seated, the conference table between them. "I'm reclaiming my business interests. By sabotaging the firm, our entire system is down. We can't access client files, billing is frozen, and Kestrel Freight, our second largest client, is suddenly transferring their business." She planted her hands on the table, leaning forward. "Fix it, now." "I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm simply exercising my rights as the license holder of a system I implemented and maintained for years without compensation." His voice remained measured. As for Kestrel, Gerald made his own business decision. "This is childish, Rowan. What, You didn't get invited to a party, so you're throwing a tantrum? Is that really how you see it? Not being invited to a party? He met her gaze directly. You publicly humiliated me. You said I didn't fit the firm's image. But this isn't about one night, is it? James Whitmore mentioned your comments at the board meeting last month. You've been planning to cut me out for some time. A flicker of surprise crossed her face before she regained control. Business decisions aren't personal, Rowan. The firm has an image to maintain with clients. And I wasn't polished enough for that image, despite bringing in those very clients? You're overreacting. This is exactly why I've had to manage your involvement. You take everything so personally. Rowan felt a surge of clarity. 23 years, Sabrina. I built the foundation that your success stands on. I connected you with half your major clients. I implemented the systems that run your operations. I negotiated the lease for your events, all while you gradually erased my contributions. That's absurd. You've been adequately acknowledged. Have I? When was the last time you publicly recognized my role in the firm's success? When did you last introduce me as anything other than my husband? When you bothered to include me at all? Sabrina straightened, crossing her arms. I've worked damn hard for my success. Don't try to take credit for my achievements. I never wanted credit. I wanted respect. Rowan stood slowly. But you've made it abundantly clear that our marriage is secondary to your professional image. Don't be dramatic. This isn't about our marriage. Isn't it? You've been systematically removing me from your professional life for months. The gala was just the public culmination. Sabrina's expression hardened. Fine. You've made your point. What will it take to restore our systems and smooth things over with Gerald? This isn't a negotiation tactic, Sabrina. I'm not trying to extract concessions. I'm establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. So what? You're just going to walk away from 23 years of marriage over a guest list? No. I'm recognizing that you already did. He gathered his papers into his briefcase. I'll be staying at the lake house for a while. I think we both need space to consider what we actually want from this marriage, if anything. You're being ridiculous. We have the Wilson merger next week. I don't have time for this. That's been the problem all along, hasn't it? You've never had time for anything but the firm. Rowan moved toward the door. I'll have my attorney contact yours regarding next steps. Next steps? Her voice rose slightly. What does that mean? He paused at the doorway. It means whatever you want it to mean, Sabrina. For once, I'm putting myself first. Rowan drove to their home, planning to pack some essentials before heading to the lake house. The confrontation had left him drained but resolute. Perhaps some distance would provide clarity for both of them. The house was silent when he entered, the cleaning service having come and gone earlier. He headed upstairs to pack, but paused at Sabrina's home office. Her tablet was on the desk. She rarely went anywhere without it, but in her haste to confront him, she must have left it behind. He had never invaded her privacy before. They had always maintained certain boundaries, respected each other's personal space. But something, intuition perhaps, or the culmination of too many inconsistencies, made him reach for the device. The screen lit up at his touch. No password required. They had shared access to each other's devices for years. A small red notification showed unread messages. He hesitated, then tapped the icon. The conversation thread opened between Sabrina and Craig Devlin, the new facilities manager James had mentioned. But these weren't messages about venue arrangements. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. Counting the hours until our Denver trip. Have you told him yet about the New York office? Rowan scrolled through months of exchanges, each message more intimate than the last. Photos, plans, secret meetings disguised as business trips. The affair had been going on for nearly 6 months. Another thread caught his eye, a conversation with her fellow partner, Jonathan Holt. "Is Pierce still going to be an issue with the NY expansion?" Holt had asked 3 weeks ago. "Not for long," Sabrina had replied. "I'm handling it." Rowan set the tablet down, a strange calm settling over him. The New York expansion, something she had never mentioned to him. An affair with a younger colleague. A systematic plan to remove him from her life while maintaining access to his business connections. He moved through the house in a daze, gathering clothes and essentials on autopilot. In their bedroom, he noticed subtle changes he'd overlooked. Cologne that wasn't his in the guest bathroom. A man's watch hastily tucked in her jewelry box when he opened it, looking for cufflinks she had borrowed. Every discovery was another foundation stone, crumbling beneath the structure of their marriage. What had been real? Had she ever valued him beyond his utility to her career? Hours later, Rowan sat in his home office, surrounded by the evidence of his contributions, photos of client events he'd arranged, awards the firm had received for initiatives he'd spearheaded, the very systems and connections he'd built over decades. For the first time in their marriage, he allowed himself to weep. Not from anger or even the pain of betrayal, but from the hollow recognition that he had devoted his life to someone who had never truly seen him. The lake house awaited, its isolation both welcome and terrifying. What was he now, stripped of the identity he'd built as Sabrina's supportive husband? Who was Rowan Pierce when the foundations he'd created for others were removed? Night fell, casting his office into darkness. He made no move to turn on the lights. The darkness suited his mood, the emptiness of the house matching the void opening inside him. 23 years. Gone. And for what? A younger man, a New York office, a more polished image. Rowan Pierce had hit rock bottom, and the ground beneath him was still crumbling away. Dawn crept through the windows of the lake house as Rowan sat motionless in the old leather chair his father had loved. He hadn't slept. The night had passed in a blur of memories and questions, leaving him hollow-eyed and empty. His phone lay silent on the side table. He'd turned off notifications after the barrage of messages from Sabrina demanding system access and threatening various consequences. The weak morning light cast long shadows across the rustic wood floors. This place had always been their retreat, but now it felt like exile. When the phone suddenly rang, Rowan flinched. The display showed a name he hadn't seen in some time. Michael Moreno, founding partner of Moreno & Shaw, a boutique legal firm specializing in business law. They'd worked together years ago on several projects. He almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct made him answer. "Rowan, Michael Moreno here. Hope I'm not calling too early." "No." His voice sounded rough, unused. "I've been up." "Good to hear your voice. Been a while." Michael paused. "Look, I'll get right to it. Word travels fast in our circles. I heard about some changes happening with Holt and Barkley, and your name keeps coming up." Rowan said nothing, waiting. "Gerald Kestrel called me yesterday. Said you might be redirecting some business relationships. Made quite an impression on him with how you handled things." "Did he?" Rowan rubbed his eyes. It seemed surreal to be discussing business matters when his personal life lay in ruins around him. "He did. And he's not the only one. Several business contacts have mentioned you in the last 24 hours. Michael's voice grew more focused. "I've always respected how you operate, Rowan. Clean, professional, relationship-focused, old school, like me. I appreciate that, Michael. Here's the thing. My partner Shaw and I have been looking to expand our corporate advisory services. We need someone with your connections and approach. A beat of silence. We'd like to talk to you about a partnership position. Rowan blinked, the words not quite registering. A partnership? Full equity stake. Your own client portfolio. Complete autonomy in your area of expertise. Michael's tone warmed. We value what you bring to the table, Rowan. Always have. The contrast with Sabrina's dismissal couldn't have been starker. Where she had erased him, these respected professionals saw his worth clearly. I'm in a transition period right now, Rowan admitted. All the better time to consider new opportunities. One door closes, another opens. Isn't that what they say? Michael sounded genuinely enthusiastic. Can you come by the office today? Meet the team, see the space, talk details? Something stirred in Rowan's chest. Not quite hope, but perhaps its distant cousin. I could do that. Excellent. Let's say 1:00 p.m. I'll have lunch brought in. After ending the call, Rowan sat for several minutes, staring at the phone in his hand. The emptiness inside him hadn't vanished, but something else now existed alongside it. A small point of light in the darkness, a possibility he hadn't considered. He stood and walked to the shower. For the first time in 24 hours, he had somewhere to be that mattered. The offices of Moreno and Shaw occupied the 15th floor of a renovated historical building downtown. Unlike the ultra-modern glass and chrome of Holt and Barkley, this space featured restored hardwood, exposed brick, and warm lighting that created an atmosphere of established dignity rather than trendy prestige. Michael Moreno greeted Rowan in the reception area, his handshake firm and genuine. Right on time, as always. Come on back. Ellen Shaw is eager to meet you. As they walked through the office, Rowan noticed employees glancing his way with interest. Michael introduced him to several staff members, each showing genuine respect rather than the polite deference he'd received as Sabrina's husband at firm functions. Ellen Shaw awaited them in a corner conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. In her mid-60s, with silver hair in a neat bob, she rose to greet him with the confident bearing of someone who had broken through glass ceilings before they had a name. Rowan Pierce, I've heard good things for years. Her handshake was firm. Glad to finally meet you. The pleasure is mine, Rowan replied, surprised to find he meant it. They settled around a polished oak table where lunch had been arranged. Simple but quality fare, nothing ostentatious. So, Ellen began, Michael tells me you might be looking for a new professional home. That possibility has recently emerged, Rowan admitted. Michael leaned forward. Let's be direct. We know about the situation at Holt and Barkley. The business community has noticed your strategic adjustments. Word travels fast, Rowan observed. Especially when someone with your reputation makes moves, Ellen said. The way you've handled things, measured, proportional, dignified, it speaks volumes. Michael nodded. That's exactly the approach we value here. Old-fashioned integrity with modern business acumen. We've actually had our eye on you for some time, Ellen continued. Your client relationships are legendary. People trust you. That's something money can't buy. Rowan studied them both, searching for ulterior motives and finding none. I appreciate the interest, but I should be transparent. My personal situation is complicated at the moment. Ellen waved a hand dismissively. Everyone has personal complications, Rowan. What matters is how you handle them. From what we've seen, you handle things with exceptional grace. Michael slid a folder across the table. This is our formal offer. Full equity partnership. Your own division focusing on client relationship management and business development. Salary, profit sharing, benefits, all detailed inside. Rowan opened the folder, scanning the document. The terms were generous, far more so than he had anticipated. This is substantial. It reflects your value, Ellen stated matter-of-factly. The value that others may have overlooked. The unspoken reference to Sabrina hung in the air. We've also prepared an office for you, Michael added. Would you like to see it? They walked down a short hallway to a corner office with windows on two sides. Unlike the sterile guest offices he'd used at Sabrina's firm when necessary, this space had been thoughtfully arranged. A solid desk, comfortable visitor chairs, even a few tasteful art pieces. This would be yours, Michael said. Of course, you can personalize it however you like. Rowan walked to the window, looking out at the city where he'd lived his entire professional life. From this vantage point, he could actually see the Holt and Barclay building several blocks away. Why now? He asked, turning back to face them. Ellen smiled. Because sometimes the right person becomes available at exactly the right moment. We've respected your loyalty for years, Rowan. We wouldn't have approached you otherwise. But now circumstances have changed, Rowan finished for her. Exactly. Michael's expression was sincere. Their loss can be our gain, and yours. Standing in that office, with the partnership agreement in his hand and these respected professionals validating his worth so clearly, Rowan felt something shift inside him. The emptiness didn't disappear, but it began to make room for something new, a sense of possibility he hadn't felt in years. The following morning, Rowan sat across from Andrew Chambers in his attorney's office. The partnership agreement from Moreno and Shaw lay on the desk between them, alongside divorce paperwork. I've reviewed the offer, Andrew said, tapping the folder. It's exceptional, Rowan. No hidden catches, clear equity structure, solid compensation. They're offering you exactly what they say they are. A true partnership. Rowan nodded. And the other matter? Andrew's expression softened slightly. I've prepared the initial divorce filing as requested. No-fault grounds citing irreconcilable differences. He hesitated. Are you certain about this direction? 23 years is a long time. I'm certain. Rowan's voice was steady. The marriage ended long before I found out about the affair. I just didn't see it. Fair enough. Andrew slid the documents forward. I've outlined a proposed settlement framework that's equitable without being punitive. You're entitled to more, given the circumstances. I don't want a war, Andrew. I want a clean break. Understood. Just remember that what feels generous during emotional times can look different later. Rowan signed where indicated, each stroke of the pen feeling simultaneously heavy and liberating. What's the timeline? I'll file these today. Sabrina will be served within 48 hours. After that, it depends on whether she contests or cooperates. Andrew gathered the papers. For the partnership agreement, I'd recommend accepting. It's a solid opportunity. I've already decided to accept. Rowan reached for his phone. I'll call Michael after our meeting. Andrew nodded approvingly. Good. Moving forward professionally while addressing personal matters. That's the right approach. After leaving the attorney's office, Rowan drove to their home, soon to be just hers, to collect more of his belongings. Sabrina was at work, the house empty and silent. He moved efficiently through the rooms, packing clothes, books, personal items that mattered to him. In their bedroom, he paused before the wedding photo on the dresser. They had looked so young, so full of promise. He placed the frame face down and continued packing. His phone rang as he was loading the last box into his car. Michael Moreno's name appeared on the screen. Michael. I was about to call you. Great minds think alike, Michael replied. Have you had a chance to consider our offer? I have. I'd like to accept. Excellent. Michael's enthusiasm was genuine. When can you start? Rowan glanced back at the house that had been his home for 15 years. How about Monday? Perfect. We'll have everything ready. After ending the call, Rowan stood in the driveway for a moment, keys in hand. The past few days had brought his world crashing down, yet somehow created space for something new to emerge. As he drove away, he didn't look back at the house in the rearview mirror. Some things were better left behind. The road ahead might be uncertain, but for the first time in days, it contained possibilities worth pursuing. The lake house would be home for now. Monday would begin a new chapter. And between now and then, he would begin the process of discovering who Rowan Pierce was when standing firmly on his own foundation. Rowan arrived at Moreno and Shaw precisely 30 minutes before his official start time. The early morning quiet of the office gave him a moment to center himself before stepping into his new role. He stood before the door of his corner office, fingertips brushing the nameplate that had been installed over the weekend. Rowan Pierce, partner. Inside, someone had placed a welcome basket on his desk containing specialty coffee, a leather portfolio embossed with the firm's logo, and a handwritten note from both Michael and Ellen. The gesture, simple but thoughtful, stood in stark contrast to the invisible role he'd played for so many years. He was hanging his jacket when a knock came at the open door. Morning, Rowan. Michael Moreno entered carrying 2 coffee mugs. Thought you might appreciate the real stuff instead of that welcome basket blend, though it's not bad. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate the early welcome. Ellen's gathering the team at 9 to introduce you properly. Michael settled into one of the visitor chairs. How are you feeling about day 1? Ready, Rowan said, surprising himself with how true it felt. Excellent. We've scheduled introductory meetings with key staff throughout the day. Nothing too intensive, just getting you oriented. Michael glanced at his watch. Looks like people are starting to arrive. I'll let you settle in. As the morning progressed, Rowan met with department heads and team members. Each interaction reinforced what had initially drawn him to accept the partnership. These people valued clear communication, established relationships, and professional integrity. His kind of people. During the formal introduction, Ellen outlined Rowan's role to the assembled staff. Rowan brings decades of relationship management experience and strategic thinking to our team. His approach to business, building trust, delivering value, maintaining integrity, aligns perfectly with our firm's philosophy. She gestured toward him. He'll be heading our new client relations division with full autonomy and partner authority. When it was his turn to speak, Rowan kept it brief and genuine. I appreciate the warm welcome. I believe in straightforward dealing and mutual respect in business relationships. I look forward to working with each of you to continue building on the excellent reputation Moreno and Shaw has established. By lunchtime, news of Rowan's move was circulating through the business community. His phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from contacts and clients. Gerald Kestrel sent a particularly satisfying note. Told you they'd be lucky to have you. Dinner next week to discuss expanding our arrangement? Late afternoon found Rowan reviewing client files when Jessica Barnes, the marketing director, appeared at his door with mock-ups of his new business cards. What do you think? She asked, placing several designs on his desk. Rowan picked one up, feeling the weight of the heavy cardstock. His name and title prominently displayed, no qualifiers, no caveats, just his name, representing himself. "This one," he said, selecting the most straightforward design. "Clean, professional, to the point." Jessica nodded approvingly. "That was my favorite, too. I'll put the order in. You'll have them by Wednesday." As the office gradually emptied for the day, Rowan remained, familiarizing himself with his new environment. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt recognized, visible, valued for exactly who he was. 2 weeks into his new position, Rowan had established a comfortable routine. He'd moved from the lake house to a furnished apartment downtown, closer to the office. The divorce proceedings were moving forward, with Sabrina neither contesting nor cooperating, simply having her attorney handle communications. He was reviewing proposals for a new client when his assistant knocked on his door. "Mr. Pierce, there's a Sabrina Pierce in reception asking to see you. She doesn't have an appointment." Rowan set down his pen, surprised despite having half expected this moment. "Thank you, Diane. Please show her to Conference Room B. I'll be there shortly." He took a moment to gather himself, straightening his tie and collecting his thoughts. Then he walked calmly to the smaller conference room where Sabrina waited. She wore an impeccably tailored navy suit, her posture rigid as she stood looking out the window. When she turned at his entrance, he noticed the subtle signs of strain, slight shadows under her eyes, tension at the corners of her mouth. "Rowan, thank you for seeing me." Her tone was professionally cordial, but with an undertone of urgency. "Of course." He gestured to the table. "Would you like to sit?" They settled across from each other, the polished surface between them like a demilitarized zone. "You're looking well," she observed. "This place suits you." "It does." He kept his response simple, waiting for her to reveal her purpose. Sabrina folded her hands on the table. "I think we need to discuss the situation. The firm is facing significant challenges without the systems and clients you redirected. I'm sure Holt and Barkley has the resources to adapt. We do, but the transition has been more disruptive than anticipated." She leaned forward slightly. "Rowan, I understand you were upset about what happened at the gala. Perhaps I handled it poorly, but this response seems disproportionate." "Does it?" He met her gaze steadily. "I simply reclaimed business relationships that were mine to begin with. Nothing more. The timing suggests otherwise." A flash of the old Sabrina, sharp, calculating. Then she softened her approach. "Look, we've been together 23 years. Surely we can find a reasonable compromise here." "What did you have in mind?" "A mutual restoration. You reinstate the document system and help smooth things over with Gerald. In return, the firm acknowledges your contributions more formally." She produced a folder from her briefcase. "We could offer you an official consulting position with appropriate compensation." Rowan didn't reach for the folder. "And our personal situation? We've both said things in anger, made decisions in haste." She offered a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We could put the divorce proceedings on hold, take some time to reconsider." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost impressive. No mention of Craig Devlin, no acknowledgement of the affair or the New York plans she'd hidden from him. "Sabrina," he said quietly, "do you actually want to save our marriage, or do you want to save the firm's operational stability?" Her slight hesitation told him everything. "I think both are worth saving," she finally answered. "I disagree." Rowan's voice remained calm. "Our marriage ended long before the gala. You made that decision without consulting me, just like you made plans for the New York expansion without mentioning it." Her eyes widened slightly. How did you? It doesn't matter. What matters is that we're both moving forward on separate paths. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. I'll have my attorney contact yours to continue the divorce process. As for business matters, Moreno and Shaw would be happy to discuss potential transition services for your firm at our standard consulting rates. Sabrina remained seated, recalculating. You've changed. No, I've simply stopped being invisible. He moved toward the door. If there's nothing else? She gathered her things, her movements precise despite her evident frustration. This isn't like you, Rowan. You've always been reasonable, willing to compromise. I am being reasonable. I'm just no longer compromising my own worth. He held the door for her. I can have my assistant show you out. That won't be necessary. She paused at the threshold. This isn't over. We should meet again next week, when you've had time to consider the full implications. If you'd like to schedule a proper business meeting, my assistant can find a time. Otherwise, all communication should go through our attorneys. As he watched her walk away, Rowan felt none of the turmoil he'd expected, only a quiet certainty that he was finally standing on solid ground of his own making. The following week, Rowan agreed to a final meeting with Sabrina at her request. His attorney had advised that a face-to-face discussion might expedite the divorce proceedings, which Sabrina was now subtly delaying through legal maneuvers. They met in a private room at Callaway's, an upscale restaurant equidistant between their offices. Neutral territory with sufficient privacy for what needed to be said. Sabrina arrived precisely on time, as always. Something in her demeanor had shifted since their last encounter, a resignation, perhaps, or simply a new strategy. Thank you for meeting me, she said, as they were seated. You indicated there were matters to discuss that couldn't be handled through attorneys. Rowan kept his tone businesslike. The server took their drink orders, water for both, and discreetly withdrew. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Sabrina began, uncharacteristically hesitant. About us, about how we got here. Rowan waited, neither encouraging nor discouraging her. The firm is struggling without the systems you implemented. 3 more clients have followed Gerald to your new firm. She smoothed her napkin, a nervous gesture he'd rarely seen from her. The managing partners are concerned. Understandable, but that's a business matter for Holt and Barkley to address. It's more than that. She met his eyes directly. Craig Devlin resigned last week, took a position with a firm in Chicago. Rowan absorbed this information without visible reaction. I see. You knew about him. Yes. She nodded slowly. I'm not proud of how I handled things, Rowan. The affair was a mistake. One of many, it seems. The admission hung between them, neither apology nor justification. What do you want from this meeting, Sabrina? Rowan asked directly. She took a breath. Clarity, closure, perhaps a more amicable path forward. She reached into her briefcase and removed a manila envelope, placing it on the table. I've signed the divorce papers. Uncontested with the settlement terms your attorney proposed. Rowan looked at the envelope, then back at her. Thank you for not dragging this out further. I also wanted to say something that's been difficult for me to acknowledge. Her voice became more measured, as if she'd rehearsed what came next. You were right. I systematically erased your contributions to the firm, to my career, to our marriage. I convinced myself that my success was solely my own achievement. Rowan remained silent, allowing her to continue. The irony is that it took your absence for me to see how much you actually did. A hint of rueful smile touched her lips. The foundation stones, as you put it. I didn't appreciate their importance until they were gone. And now? Now I understand what I failed to see for years. Your business acumen, your relationship skills, your strategic thinking. She gestured toward their surroundings. Your success here has made that abundantly clear. The business community has noticed who they're following, and it isn't Holt and Barkley. The recognition, so long withheld, so belatedly given, felt like the closing of a circle. Not satisfying exactly, but completing. I hope you find what you're looking for, Sabrina, Rowan said, his voice softening slightly. New York, or wherever your path leads. Surprise flickered across her face. You really did know everything. Enough. He reached for the envelope containing the signed divorce papers. Is there anything else we need to discuss? She shook her head. No. I believe we've said what needed to be said. As they prepared to leave, Sabrina paused. For what it's worth, Rowan, you deserved better than what I gave you. I'm sorry it took losing you to realize that. He nodded, accepting her words without needing to affirm or deny them. Some acknowledgments came too late to change outcomes, but weren't worthless for that fact. Outside, they parted with a brief handshake, professional, dignified, final. Rowan watched her walk away, not with regret, but with a sense of chapters properly closed, pages turning to something new. The weight of invisibility had finally lifted. He had reclaimed not just his professional value, but his sense of self-worth. The project was complete. The boardroom at Moreno and Shaw buzzed with energy as Rowan concluded his presentation. 3 months of focused work had culminated in this moment, securing the Harrington Group account, a client that had eluded the firm for years. And with the revised logistics structure, we project a 22% reduction in their operational costs over the first 18 months. Rowan closed his portfolio, meeting the appreciative gazes around the table. Any questions? Theodore Harrington, the silver-haired CEO who'd built his shipping empire from a single tugboat, exchanged glances with his executive team before standing. I believe we've seen everything we need to see. He extended his hand to Rowan. Moreno and Shaw will be handling our legal affairs effective immediately. The handshake sealed more than a business arrangement. It represented the vindication of Rowan's approach, his value, his vision. After the Harrington team departed, Ellen Shaw tapped her water glass with a pen, drawing everyone's attention. A toast, without alcohol, I'm afraid, until the celebration dinner tonight. Genuine warmth filled her voice. To Rowan Pierce, who just landed the largest account in our firm's history. When Michael and I brought you on board, we knew you were exceptional. Today proves we underestimated you. Michael clapped Rowan on the shoulder. Harrington has turned down every firm in the city for 15 years. What did you say to the old sea dog? I didn't say anything special, Rowan replied. I just listened to what he actually needed, not what we wanted to sell him. As the team filtered out, Diane appeared at the door with a special delivery envelope. This just arrived for you, Mr. Pierce. Marked urgent. Alone in the boardroom, Rowan opened the envelope to find the final divorce decree. The timing struck him as fitting. One chapter conclusively ending as another reached its first pinnacle of success. He ran his fingers over the embossed court seal, expecting to feel something more dramatic, pain perhaps, or at least melancholy. Instead, he found a quiet acceptance. 23 years reduced to legal terminology and a judge's signature. Michael reappeared at the doorway. Everything all right? Rowan nodded, slipping the document back into its envelope. Final divorce papers. Michael studied him for a moment. Interesting timing. Life has a way of balancing the scales. Indeed it does. Michael gestured toward the hallway. The team's gathering for an impromptu celebration before the formal dinner tonight. Join us? Rowan stood, tucking the envelope into his briefcase. The contrast couldn't have been clearer, from a marriage where his contributions went unacknowledged to a workplace where his success was celebrated openly. "Wouldn't miss it," he replied, feeling the weight of belonging settle comfortably on his shoulders. That evening, after the celebratory dinner with the firm, Rowan returned to his apartment and settled into his favorite chair by the window. The city lights spread before him like scattered stars, a view he'd come to appreciate during these past months of rebuilding. On the side table lay the divorce decree, a finished chapter he hadn't yet filed away. Beside it sat his phone, which had been unusually quiet all day. No messages from Sabrina, no last-minute legal questions, no lingering business matters to resolve. He picked up his tablet, intending to review client notes, but found himself instead checking business news. A headline caught his attention. Holt and Barkley loses bid for Westmore Industries amid operational concerns. The article detailed how Sabrina's firm had failed to secure a major client due to questions about their document management capabilities and recent staff turnover. It mentioned the New York expansion being placed on indefinite hold. Rowan set the tablet down, surprised by his own reaction. There was no satisfaction in seeing the firm struggle, no vindication in Sabrina's professional challenges. Instead, he felt an unexpected twinge of, not sympathy exactly, but something adjacent to it. He remembered Richard Westmore, the potential client mentioned in the article. They'd played golf together at charity events for years. Richard had always respected Rowan's business acumen, often seeking his advice informally. Before he could reconsider, Rowan picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Richard, Rowan Pierce here. Hope I'm not calling too late." "Rowan, good to hear from you. Congratulations on the Harrington account. Word travels fast." "Thank you. Listen, I saw the news about Westmore Industries seeking new legal representation." "Yes, we're still looking. Your name came up, actually. Are you calling to pitch Moreno and Shaw? Because I'd certainly consider—" "Actually, no." Rowan surprised himself with his next words. "I wanted to mention Carlton Phillips at Benson and Ellis. He's exceptional with manufacturing clients like yours. Very detail-oriented. Excellent team." "Not suggesting your ex-wife's firm?" Richard asked with characteristic bluntness. "No, but not for the reasons you might think. Their expertise simply doesn't align with your needs as well as Carlton's does." "Interesting recommendation." Richard paused. "No strings attached to this suggestion?" "None whatsoever, just one businessman helping another." After ending the call, Rowan sat with his decision. He hadn't steered Richard toward Sabrina's firm. That would have been dishonest, given their current limitations. But he hadn't actively worked against them either, which he could easily have done. Instead, he'd recommended someone whose skills genuinely matched Richard's needs. The next morning, he made another call, this one to Marcus Chen at TechVault. "Marcus, I need a favor. There's a firm called Benson and Ellis that's taking on Westmore Industries as a client. They'll need document management capabilities compatible with Westmore's systems. Sure, I can reach out to them, but why the interest? Let's just say I'm paying something forward." Rowan hesitated. "And if they happen to ask about potential partnership with other firms that have compatible systems, like Holt and Barkley, once their new system is properly implemented?" "Exactly. It would be a natural fit for certain shared clients." Marcus chuckled. "You're an interesting man, Rowan Pierce. Most people in your position would salt the earth." "I'm not interested in destruction, Marcus. Never was. just in building something that recognizes its own foundation. The call complete, Rowan felt a quiet sense of rightness. Not forgiveness exactly. Some betrayals went too deep for that. But a release from the need for further consequence. He had reclaimed his value without diminishing others. That, perhaps, was the truest measure of his transformation. The following morning, Rowan arrived at the office to find Michael and Ellen waiting in reception, wearing expressions that suggested contained excitement. "Good morning," he greeted them, curious about their unusual presence. "Everything all right?" "More than all right," Ellen replied with a rare smile. "We have something to show you." Michael gestured toward the hallway. "If you'll follow us." They led him not to his current office, but to the opposite wing of the building, the executive floor where the founding partners' offices were located. Rowan followed, puzzled by the detour. "The Harrington account changes things for the firm," Michael explained as they walked. "It puts us in a different league. The board met this morning and made some decisions." They stopped before a mahogany door at the end of the hallway. A corner office, Rowan knew, had been vacant since a senior partner retired months earlier. The nameplate holder was empty. "We'll be announcing a restructuring today," Ellen continued. "Creating a new client relations division with expanded scope and authority." Michael produced a polished brass nameplate from his pocket and slid it into the holder. Rowan Pierce, Executive Partner, Client Relations. Executive Partner? Rowan read the title with surprise. "With full voting rights on the managing board," Ellen confirmed. "Your vision for client relationships aligns perfectly with where this firm needs to go." Michael opened the door, revealing a spacious office with windows on two sides offering panoramic views of the city. The space had been completely renovated, elegant but not ostentatious, professional but personal. "This reflects your actual value to the firm," Ellen said simply. "We believe in recognizing foundations properly." The echo of his own thoughts about foundations was not lost on Rowan. He stepped into the office, his office, feeling the significance of the moment. On the desk sat a framed photograph of his grandfather's farm in Ohio, where he'd spent summers as a boy learning the values that had shaped his life. He'd mentioned it once in passing to Ellen. The thoughtfulness of its presence here touched him deeply. "The official announcement goes out at noon," Michael said, "but we wanted you to have a moment to take it in first." "Thank you," Rowan said, the words inadequate for what he felt. "Both of you." They nodded, understanding the depth beneath his simple response, and quietly withdrew, closing the door behind them. Alone in the office, Rowan stood by the window, gazing out at the city where his professional journey had taken so many unexpected turns. From the height of this office, he could see both Holt and Barclay's building and the Metropolitan Club in the distance, landmarks of his past that now seemed to belong to another life entirely. He turned back to look at his name on the door, remembering that night at the gala when his name had been erased from the guest list. The symmetry was perfect, the circle complete, from invisible to essential, from supporting player to executive partner, from someone whose contributions went unacknowledged to having his name prominently displayed. Rowan settled into the chair behind his desk, running his hand along the polished surface. This was what belonging felt like, not just being included, but being valued for exactly who you were. He opened his calendar to prepare for the day ahead, ready to step fully into this new chapter. No looking back, no lingering regrets, only forward, into a future built on the solid foundation of his reclaimed worth. The city lights gradually dimmed as night deepened, leaving Rowan Pierce alone with his thoughts in his executive office. He stood by the window, his reflection ghosting against the darkened glass, name prominently displayed on the door behind him. the same name once deliberately erased from a guest list. He ran his fingers along the smooth edge of his desk, thinking about foundations, those invisible structures that support everything above them, yet rarely receive recognition. For most of his marriage, he had been that unseen foundation, steadily supporting Sabrina's rise while his own contributions faded into the background of her success. The irony wasn't lost on him. Only by being completely removed from the structure did his true value become apparent, to others, and perhaps more importantly, to himself. His grandfather had taught him something valuable during those Ohio summers long ago. A man's worth isn't determined by others' assessment, but by knowing what he brings to the table and standing firm in that knowledge. The old man had lived by those words, quietly confident in his contribution to the world without needing constant validation. Rowan realized now that his greatest mistake hadn't been supporting Sabrina's career or even accepting a diminished role in their partnership. It had been allowing someone else to define his value. The guest list rejection hadn't created the problem. It had merely exposed what had been true for years. Sometimes, life's most painful moments were actually doorways to where you truly belonged. Being excluded from that party had ultimately led him here, to a place where his contributions were not only acknowledged, but celebrated. There was peace in this understanding. Not the shallow satisfaction of vindication, but the deeper contentment of finding solid ground beneath his feet. Ground of his own making, where his name belonged on the door simply because he had earned it to be there. He switched off his desk lamp and prepared to leave. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to build something of lasting value. But unlike before, he would build it standing firmly on his own foundation, secure in the knowledge that his worth existed independent of anyone else's recognition.